we've got to talk about the upcoming presidential election of 2024 in the United States. As an astrologer, I have to break the news to you. It's our job as astrologers to be messengers for others. As astrologers, we are messengers, interpreters, and translators of the cosmos. And this coming presidential election in the United States, the presidential 2024 election with Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, it's gonna be a doozy. When I look at the astrology, it looks messy. It looks wild. We are going through some insane times coming up in the months ahead, and especially when we get into 2025. Back in December 2023, on New Year's, I created a series of Instagram videos sharing with you on how we are in the prelude. We are in the year before of what these next few years in the United States will be like. 2025, 2026, and 2027. These are three critical, messy, and very unsettling years for the country of the United States. And I should also say, this is not to fearmonger. If you know me or you've been following my life on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, you follow my personal creative channel, which you can follow me over at Helena Woods, my other YouTube channel, you will know that I'm a very optimistic, Pollyanna type person. I see the glass half full always. But there are times when I have to be honest and be real with you and tell you what is about to ensue. And this election is kicking off the next several years. Technically, this big transit for the United States ends in 2033. 2033 being the final year of this big Uranus return, which happens once every 84 years. But it's not just about the Uranus return. Yes, Uranus returns, we always have war, civil tension, civil unrest, political uprisings and upheaval, and just a lot of devastation during Uranus returns in the United States. This is a trend. Definitely recommend the Astrology podcast Uranus return episode. It was fantastic if you like history and studying correlations and patterns and cycles with astrology. But we also have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. Aries being a sign of war, conflict, empowerment, and confidence. But we're leaving this very dreamy Neptune and Piscean time that we've been in since 2011. Also, we're about to wake up from the fog. We're about to wake up from this collective fog that we've been in since 2011. And while there certainly has been more peace, we are entering Aries territory. And Aries is not about peace. And while all that's happening, we've got a presidential election in the US. And before we get into the astrology for Donald Trump this year and seeing what's kind of coming up with the presidential election and the transits, some really important things that you should take note of, I do want to say very frankly, very point blank, and many of astrologers don't like to give hard and fast predictions, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to say I am concerned that there is no election, that possibly no one wins the election, all while we're having major planetary retrogrades happen during this election, including Mars, the planet of action. Let's talk about Trump's solar return chart, which is basically his chart for the year, because it is his birthday today on June 14th, and so I wanted to pull up his solar return chart and just see what are the big themes that are coming up for him this year. There's a lot going on in the 12th house, and as an astrologer, you could see the 12th house and just think prison, right? 12th house is prison. 12th house is being in isolation, in solitude, being imprisoned. However, the 12th house is also really big for presidents. A lot of presidents throughout history have a lot of activity, a lot of stelliums, important planets in their 12th house. This is a very common thing. I think Chris Brennan mentioned this once about US presidents always having a lot of 12th house activity because the 12th house rules working in secret, working in private, private behind the scenes matters. So often people in government or people who work behind the scenes, like CIA type work, they often have a lot of 12th house activity. Often as astrologers, we see a house and we just assume it means one thing, but there could be many possibilities. And that's why we are interpreters. And that's why we are not psychics. We are not crystal ball gurus on the internet exactly saying this is what's going to happen. No, because that's not what astrology is. Astrology is the art of interpretation. And we use these glyphs and these different symbols to understand and make sense of it as translators. We work with the messengers of the cosmos to make sense of all this, which makes me come to these conclusions. Here are my predictions of what I think may happen for this presidential election in 2024.
So if you didn't watch my last video on Donald Trump, I do want to recap that he is entering a level 1 peak period in the spring of 2025, just before the Uranus return of the United States. And peak periods are times of active importance in one's life. It's kind of like if you're looking back at your biography, those chapters or sections of the person's biography that are really noteworthy, or the things that you remember them for, the times that you remember them from, those are peak periods. And Donald Trump has an upcoming peak period. I mean, from late 70s to late 90s. He's most likely probably not going to live. I mean, he could live that long, but this is a long period of time, but he is entering a peak period coming up in 25. Now, right now, he is in this preparatory phase. He is in this building up phase, and he's going to begin on a chapter level, a level 2. He is going to begin a peak period coming up this November, just after the election in this year in 24. And that will lead him into this level 1 section or part of his biography that is a big peak. So wanted to bring that up again because it is a really big deal when we're seeing something like that in zodiacal releasing, which is, an ancient timing technique from first century, second century BC. Now, I want to show you his solar return chart. So here we have his natal chart, but I want to share with you his solar return chart because it is his birthday today. So here is his solar return chart for the year. So, a solar return chart, if you don't know, it's a chart that basically gives you a snapshot of your year at a glance, the energies, topics, and themes of your year for that birth year. And his solar return chart, you can see that he's ruled by the moon. His moon's in Virgo and it's opposing Saturn. So there is this story about taking on more responsibility in his life or feeling like he needs to control himself. And I think maintaining control and in authority, maintaining control in his emotions, being emotionally regulated, emotionally stable is going to be really important for him, because his emotions is opposing Saturn, which is increased responsibility or obligations or duties that he has. Now, that Saturn is on his MC, which is his highest point of visibility. It shows his occupation, his work, and his social reputation at the highest level. So there is an element of, either he is taking on more responsibility in his, and this can be seen as he is taking on more responsibilities in his work. He's being seen as someone who's more serious. Saturn is about like an older figure, an older general, someone who is kind of maintaining order and structure, a manager, a boss. That's what we think of when we think of Saturn, and it is on his MC. So I mean, this is an indicator of taking on more power. Now, the other thing that's really noteworthy is Mars is squaring Pluto within 2 degrees. Now, Mars is a generational planet, but Mars square Pluto is volatility, anger, and needing to maintain control of his anger, his temperament. This can be war, violence, or disturbing the peace. If you don't follow me, I am a Hellenistic astrologer. I do use traditional techniques. Mars is in a sign-based conjunction with Uranus being in Taurus. So while they may not be right next to each other, living in the same bedroom, they are living in the same house, they are roommates. So there is a full awareness of seeing each other. Now, the other big thing to point out about his solar return chart is he's got a lot of things in Gemini, including his sun, which sun is, his vitality, his energy, his life force. It's conjunct Venus and Mercury, and it's making a sign-based conjunction to Jupiter. These are the two best planets in astrology, and they're together with his sun. This is in the 12th house of working behind the scenes in solitude, isolation, or behind the scenes work. Could be, doing things in secret or privately working on things. But this is, the benefics are here, which can be very helpful. And Jupiter is also trining Pluto, which is power and charisma, influence, wealth, and magnetism. I also just want to take a quick look at his secondary progressions. And something that I did note was that his moon secondary progressions is a really fantastic timing technique for seeing where someone is in their life cycles. And I teach on this in my Trust Your Timeline course, which if you wanted to join my live course and learn all these different techniques like zodiacal releasing and your lunar progressions, definitely check out the link below in the description so you can sign up for the next live round this summer in August. But note that his moon started squaring Saturn in February of this year. And you could see that red line is increasing as we get into the months of March. April, May is the most intense month for him. May was the hardest month for him with moon squaring Saturn. I mean, this could be difficult news, seriousness, stoicness, delays, obstacles, and just emotionally feeling really fed up and tired. I wonder if he's been ill or if he's just been feeling less vital. With the moon on his ascendant, which is his physical body and how he's physically doing and how he is, the moon in Scorpio, moon is in its fall in Scorpio. It's not a happy placement when the moon is in Scorpio, and it is making that tight square to Saturn in the month of May, which is, depression, sadness, failure, things not going well for him and him not doing well. But note how, as we get into June, July, August, that square is still happening, but it's lessening from May. So May is the most challenging month. But as we get into June, it lessens. July, it lessens a lot, where there's now a 2-degree separation from that Saturn. By the time we get into August, there's a 3-degree separation. Then we get into the fall, and it looks a lot stronger for him. So I did want to note that in terms of life cycles as well for this year, is that he really went through the most challenging time back in May of 2024. But he will have one other square. He will have one other tricky position. The moon will be squaring his MC, which can be, some sort of challenge with government. Pluto on the MC, that does rule government, politics, big businesses. Saturn's there too, and Moon is squaring that MC exactly around the time of the election. So, very interesting to see. The pressure is mounting for him for sure. Now, Donald Trump will be entering a major peak period for the month of June 11th to July 19th. So he's in that right now as I record this on his birthday, June 14th. But this period right now is a major peak, and here's some dates to kind of keep an eye on. These where these plus signs are. These are peak periods for him, specifically that week of June and then June 23rd to the 29th. He will then enter a major peak period around the time of the election. October 24th of this year to November 21st, he will be in a major peak period. His lot of fortune is in Aquarius, and so this makes this period, this fall around the election, a major peak period for him. I think we're going to get some pretty crazy news from Trump around the time of, wow, damn. Around the time of the Leo new moon on August 5th, there will be a new moon right on his Mars and his ascendant. Now, this new moon looks really tricky around the time of the election because we have Uranus, squaring this Venus and this new moon. And so there is this sense of surprise or unexpectedness. And this new moon, new beginnings, seeds being planted, fresh starts of starting something new. It's happening in Leo, which is right on his Mars and right on his ascendant. And what's also noteworthy is that Mars and Jupiter will be making a conjunction around the time of this new moon in the beginning of August. And Mars and Jupiter is big energy, boldness, courage. It's in Gemini, which is talking a lot, speaking a lot, acting a bit boldly and courageously. But because it is on top of his Uranus and his North Node, this is very volatile. It's Mars and Jupiter, that big, loud, bold, chatty, could be things in the news that's coming out around this time. This can be things going on with his fan base or his followers. There is a square from Saturn. Saturn is squaring that Mars and Jupiter, which is tension or conflict or the sense of something not moving as quickly or as easily. Saturn is kind of putting the brakes on it, and Mars wants to go fast. And with Jupiter, with Mars, it's like, let's go, let's take action, let's not think about this. And Saturn's like, hold up, delay, stop. And this is happening right on his Uranus, which is very unstable, unexpected, chaotic, restless. It's happening on his North Node, which is volume up intensity and can be very malefic. The North Node can be very malefic in ancient astrology. And so I think we're going to be getting some big news about Trump and what's happening going forward in early August around the time of this new moon in Leo. That was a date I really wanted to point out to you guys because it was something that really stood out. But then here's the thing. Mars will enter Cancer in his 12th house of hidden enemies, things he can't see, people he can't see. Now, when Mars hits his Mercury around this time, end of September of 2024, Mars will hit his Mercury, which can be challenging communication, but also motivational speeches. Mars on Mercury is heated debates, heated discussions. And with Mars on Mercury, there can be conflict in speech, or just feeling very riled up about things. And Mercury rules his 11th house of the followers and the fan base. Mercury also rules his second house of income and money. So definitely can be some points of contention coming up. But the thing I'm really curious about is Mars is going to go over his Saturn right before the election in October, which is working really hard, long hours, but very frustrating. So it's like, it's interesting when we're looking at these transits because it's like he's got a lot going on and a lot of it's challenging, but it's like right when we get up to the election, there can be this surprise or this shock that's unexpected right at the time of the election. So Mars is hitting Venus, but here's the thing that gets really interesting. On the day of the election, Mars enters Leo that day at 0 degrees. Now, why is this important? Well, Donald Trump's ascendant, the most important house in Donald Trump's chart is Leo, and Mars is opposing Pluto. Pluto, Pluto opposing Mars is, a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict, a lot of like war. It's war energy. And what's fascinating about all this is that right after the election, about a month after, on December 7th, Mars goes retrograde in Leo. So there's something about like going back and redoing something or rethinking something or, needing to go back and change something. It's going right back to those early degrees of Leo at the time of the election on January 4th. And the thing is, Pluto goes back into Capricorn for the final last time. We're not going to see this again in our entire lifetimes or hundreds of years. Pluto will officially move into Aquarius for the next 20 years, right after the election. But during the election, Pluto goes back into Capricorn, which is like bringing back tradition to old government or older people, or, Capricorn is older age, Saturnian quality. It's structures and systems and traditions of government. And so we're getting one final pass at the time of this election And then right after the election ends, then Pluto officially leaves and moves on from that area of life. But it's just so interesting how we get the Mars retrograde right after the election, and then we get Pluto going retrograde and making one final pass into Capricorn during the election. It's like there's just so much going on. There's so much here that's like unsettling and a lot of change and a lot of like not knowing what's going on because in December, Mars will go retrograde in Leo. There's redoing something, rethinking something. Action is being redone in some way. It's crazy because when we look at this, the beginning of the year of January 2025, Uranus is retrograde on his career point. Lots of changes with things in the career. Career's like up in the air, like what's going on? Everyone's confused. Jupiter is retrograde right on his Uranus in his 11th house of the followers, the fan base. Mars is retrograde going on his in his first house of his sense of self and identity, and then it's going back to his Venus. Now, Donald Trump has 3 planets in Cancer, which means he has a stellium. So that Mars is going to go back to his Venus and hit that Venus and hit that Saturn in order retrograde. And so that Mars is hitting that Venus, and that Venus rules his third house of communication and his 10th house of career. I think there's like either misinformation being spread or there's a lack of clarity in communication on what's going on, and that's really affecting the career. It's like we're seeing so many retrogrades. The nodes are going retrograde. There's just there's a lot here of like re-looking at things. I can't help but wonder if this election is either not happening or something changes at the last effing minute of this election where they're like putting a stop to the election or someone pulls out or someone gets replaced or there's a contingent election where no one gets the votes and there's just massive confusion all around because this election really looks messy, especially in the months after the election. Like it just looks like a lot of chaos and a lot of like things being really confusing, and it's all hitting Trump's Venus, his Saturn. There's just a lot here. And so when we look at the 5th and 6th, but it's like we look at these election days, I'm in Paris, so my time zone's in Paris, but the 5th and the 6th of November, Venus is right on his moon on election day. When everyone's voting, Venus is right on his moon. And the moon is making a conjunction to his natal moon in Sag. I mean, it's a good day for Trump. I will say that. It almost looks like there's a lot of turnout for him and there's a lot of people supporting him on election day. But then there's all this mass confusion in the month after the election in December and January. So we'll see what happens. If it were an election that was quite normal, I would say Trump looks like he's going to win, definitely over Biden. But looking at the months after this election, I think there's just going to be maybe no election, back and forth, saying that he can't win. Changes happening where, he's not able to run or someone drops out and they replace Biden with someone or contingent election. There's a lot of ways this can go down, but my official prediction of kind of what I'm seeing here is that there's a lot going on in the months after the election that makes me think, do we not have a president? Do we not have someone that's like officially announced? Is there a delay after this election that's causing a lot of confusion? And we're going to start seeing that play out in a big way when Mars goes retrograde in early December. And opposing that Pluto, it just, people want answers. People want answers. They want them now, and they're going to fight and they're going to fight and they're going to wait until those answers come out. But I mean, it looks messy. And so, all of this to say, all these different timing techniques that we looked at today, if it were down to Biden and Trump and it was a normal election, Trump looks like he's going to win. I don't think it's going to be a normal election. I think this election is going to be really weird and really wild, and no one's going to know what's going on. And that leads us right into 2025 during the coming years that will be really interesting to witness. Let's just put it that way. Oh, wow, my light just went off. Is that a sign? Spooky. There's a lot that's coming up, guys, and Trump's chart is just being really activated in so many ways.
All of those things I shared with you, there's a lot of things to come as we get into 2025. And as I've mentioned previously, 2024 is just a prelude. We're not even in the active chaos of the coming years. This is actually a pretty chill year compared to what's coming. This is a weird in-between of a year. 2024 is one of those years where it's like we're in the in-between, we're in limbo, we're in that state of, it's like we're on a bridge. We're literally on a bridge from one era of life to another era of life, from one system of government to a new government, from one experience of life on this planet to a brand new experience that we can't even imagine or comprehend yet. We're on that bridge. We're in the middle of that bridge right now. And we get to the other side in 2025, and it's going to be a new era and a new age. And if you're not ready for it, it's time to get ready for it. And this is not fear mongering. I don't do fear mongering in my videos. As I mentioned, I am a very optimistic Pollyanna person. Personally, I'm very hopeful for AI. I'm very hopeful and optimistic that AI will actually bring so many wonderful achievements in science and innovation and technology that I for one, am excited to see the beginning of these new technological pursuits. However, that doesn't negate the fact that the writing is on the wall. It's literally written in these transits, what the US is going to be going through, and the rest of the world too. Like Russia and China and Europe, like there's a lot going on in these coming years. And if you're not grounded, if you're not practicing meditation, if you're not practicing mindfulness, if you don't have a stable morning routine where every day you do 5 minutes of breath work, or you read from a spiritual text, or you rely on your faith, you pray to God, you rely on something that is light and love, if you are not grounding yourself in faith, in something beautiful, in something that is love energy, it's time to get in on that. It's time to find something that you resonate with and find the things that bring you joy and bring you peace and bring you groundedness, because this is the time to get settled and to build that foundation as we get into these chaotic years of 2025, 2026, and 2020. If you don't follow astrology and you're just watching the news, you can have all the opinions that you want. You can make all the assumptions and conclusions that you want. But that doesn't negate the fact that astrology is still happening and that the dominoes need to fall in place before we can make an accurate prediction on exactly what's going to happen. And so while the dominoes have not fallen yet, and I am several months away from the election, it is June 14th. It's actually a good electional day today. I decided to record these videos today, June 14th, because the astrology was good. June 14th, 2024, while the dominoes have not fallen exactly right yet to make an accurate prediction, when I look at these charts, Trump has a stronger chance than Biden. And so between the two, I think Trump's absolutely going to win over Biden. And I think it's going to be a surprise and a shock, and it's all going to happen last minute. And the transits during this time of the election are not clear. They're messy. They're wild. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of conflict. People want answers, and they want them now. The energy is angry and tension-filled around this election. Mars will be exactly opposite Pluto, will have just entered the sign of Leo. This does not look like a pleasant time. The second thing I think of when I see this chart is contingent election. Cam White, a really fantastic, very talented, skilled astrologer, go check out his YouTube channel. He made a great video on this, on what he thinks will happen with the election. And I can definitely see this happening both in the charts, in the transits, but also just logically, it definitely makes sense. Practically speaking, my mind can totally see this happening. But a contingent election. Now, what is a contingent election? A contingent election is when the House and the Senate have to pick a VP and a president because no candidate meets the 270 required electoral votes to win the presidency, which makes me think that, wow, what if RFK is like really in the middle and taking a ton of votes away, and that's what causes this contingent election. But if neither candidate get that 270 electoral votes, then the House and the Senate have to choose a president and a VP. How crazy would that be? How wild and insane that would be. That looks like the exact setup that would lead us into the Uranus return and all of this crazy, messy astrology that we begin 2025 with. All of these things that I've just expressed in this video have absolutely no affiliation with my personal political beliefs. I will never express my political beliefs on this channel, as I'm an astrologer, and it's really important for me as in my work that I'm able to just read and interpret and put my politics and my personal beliefs aside just so I can translate. I, of course, have my very strong opinions on things, but I do not let that infiltrate my predictions, my readings, etc. And also know that none of this information that I've just shared with you, I take lightly. I've wanted to talk more about these things, but I'm always afraid of getting on camera and talking about these things because I never want it to seem like I'm causing fear or alarm or worry or anything. I'm really starting to own the fact that as astrologers, our role is to prepare people. The great mystics, the seers, the psychics, the astrologers, the people who are able to see things in the future, it is our job to be able to warn the public, to be able to spread a message before things come. And that's what we as astrologers do, is we see what's coming on the horizon, things that are good and things that are hard. We can plan for both and we can take advantage of both in order to prepare for them now. That's what we do as astrologers. And so I share this information not lightly, but taking it with the utmost care, and also just wanting to be of service and wanting to help others understand what's kind of going on in the world and where we're heading. And if you haven't thought about relocation, or you haven't created a stable, grounded, spiritual routine for yourself yet, or maybe you've thought about leaving your major metropolitan city and you're kind of on the fence about it, might be nice to move to the countryside when all this is going on. Political riots in the streets, major civil tension and unrest in the streets. Yeah, I probably would not want to live in a city during these next few years, personally. Not my advice, but I personally would not want to live in a major city during these next few years. There's a lot to think about, and so I say all this to prepare you. If you'd like to follow me for more information and more astrology, definitely hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads, and check out my astrology and astrocartography courses if you'd like to learn more from me. I have tons of free content on my blog, my newsletter, and my free astrocartography guides, which you can learn about all in the description down below. I hope you have a peaceful day, and I will see you in the next video here on this channel. Bye.